All right, this video is going to talk about how to properly and safely remove lug nuts and reinstall lug nuts and torque them to specification. This is part of our safety unit, and every student has to get signed off on this. These are the tools we will be using to remove lug nuts and to properly install them. We'll be using a 1/2-inch impact gun. We will be using a 1/2-inch drive hand torque wrench. We will be using torque sticks. We will be using flip sockets. And last, we will be using a torque spec from our torque chart that's located on our shelf in the middle of the shop. So my brother was just in a situation where he's a gas truck driver, and he was driving the truck, and it was just serviced by technicians that were professionally certified technicians, and one of them forgot to torque the lug nuts on one of the tires for the trailer of this gas truck, which could have been a horrific explosion if the truck were to flip. He pulled it over and the tire fell off the trailer. So don't think for a second this doesn't happen to you. Okay, you got to make sure whenever you take a tire off or take a lug nut off, it's installed properly with the right specs. So you're looking at this freeway. A tire comes off the semi, and it becomes like a hazard rolling along the freeway, potentially causing an accident of some kind. You're going to see several clips of these examples of how dangerous tires can be. They're like missiles. They don't stop until they hit something. They just keep rolling and rolling until finally they hit something. The inertial energy behind a moving vehicle when a tire comes off is very deadly, and you can see by these examples. So every year I teach lug nut safety to my students. And we always have students that learn it and perfect it, and then we have students that don't take it seriously because they fail to understand how significant this procedure is. So remember this as we watch these last clips. Every time a customer, a friend, a family member gives you a car and you remove that tire, you must torque that tire properly to the car, because that customer, that friend, that family member is trusting you with their life, and that you're going to properly torque it to specifications. So this is the demonstration I'm going to use, and this is what each student has to go through and get signed off. You're going to remove one lug nut here using a set of flip sockets and a 1/2-inch impact gun. Then you're going to use the correct torque stick to reinstall that one lug nut. You don't have to do all 5. Then you're going to move to the back tire, and you're going to torque all 5 lug nuts in a star pattern. Always a star pattern. Okay? With a torque wrench and another set of flip sockets using the correct specifications. When you're done, it's really important, remove the torque wrench down to reset it back to 0. Okay, so that's part of the process, is setting the torque wrench and then setting it to 0 afterwards. So let's get started. So this is how I want it left by the student that did it before. When you come up here, the impact gun has to be disconnected, the tool's right. It needs to be torqued to 100 foot-pounds. So we're going to use the right torque stick. As far as the impact gun goes, you got to make sure you understand how to disconnect and connect the impact gun. So many students don't know how to do that. You got to squeeze it together and pull this coupling back. And notice I'm pitching the hose with my hand. So I squeeze, I pull, I pull it apart, and then squeeze it back together and push that coupling up. Some people have to go this way, push down, pull this up, and use 2 hands to disconnect it. And likewise, use 2 hands to push it down and push the coupling on. The impact gun has a switch. This is the switch for direction. So to take a bolt off, you want the switch this way. And to put a bolt on or lug nut on, you put it this way. So we're going to take the lug nut off. You only have to do 1. We're going to use a set of flip sockets. So flip sockets have, in this set, has 2 American or US and 2 metric. I'm gonna put my 2-inch extension on. A lot of students don't know to line the flat spot up with the flat spot of the impact gun, or line the hole up here to the flat side of what we call the drive. Take a flip socket. There are 2 sizes. One size will fit and one size won't fit. So it's a 19 millimeter according to this. So we're gonna put this on, and all you're gonna do is take a lug nut off. Use your hand, lean into it. You don't have to have a death grip, just pump the trigger and take that lug nut off, okay? Always check your threads to make sure the threads aren't damaged. Check the threads on the stud too, and we're good. So now to reinstall this, you wanna start it at least 2 to 3 turns. We wanna switch our gun to turning it back the other direction, so on, and we don't wanna use this setup anymore. We want to get rid of the 2-inch extension and go with a torque stick that is rated at 100 foot-pounds. Again, line the dot up with the flat spot of the impact gun. Put the flip socket onto this torque stick, and then you're going to lean into it again, hold it, and you need to have it hammer 5 times to make sure it's tight. And you can hear it ratchet. I always say 5 times. So da 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 da, 5 times. And that's torqued properly. Okay, so now we're done with the front tire. So we left the impact gun disconnected, flip sockets back, torque sticks back. Now you move to the back. Now I want you to torque all 5 lug nuts in a star pattern. Okay, you're going to use a torque wrench. We got to set this torque wrench up. The Rendezvous calls for 100 foot-pounds of torque using this torque chart that we normally has hanging in the shop. So 1 full turn of this dial, and zoom in on this, is 10 foot-pounds. So you got to pull this down and turn clockwise. So here's 0, and it's all based on this measuring line right here. So right now I'm below 50 at 0. So I'll pull this down and let's get to 50. So we're at 50, and you notice the scale drops down right here. So it's a little drop, and I'm at 0 on this line, 50. So now 1 full turn, I'll be touching 60. 1 full turn, 70. 1 full turn, 80. 1 full turn, 90. 1 full turn, 100. You can see the 100 mark right there with the scale going down, and this measuring line's on 0 on the part that we turn. So we're going to go ahead now and use a 2-inch extension and the 19 millimeter flip socket. Remember, there are 2 sizes, and you torque it always in a star pattern. Okay. My students are really small in nature sometimes, so I always tell them to get your body up to the end, and it should be a steady push. Never do it up here, because this is where you would scratch the fender of the car. You can see I have a scratch right here. So I always want it below the fender, and you put your body weight, click, and then start pattern. All you do is click and release. And once you do all 5 lug nuts, you're done. Oh, look at that. That one's loose. Haha, we found one loose. Okay. Oh. So now, after we've done the 5 lug nuts, now we got to set this back to 0. So I'm going to bring this back below the 50 scale. All right, there is 50 right there, and I'm going to go 1 turn less, because the range of this is 50 to 250. And then I'm going to put my socket here, a 2-inch extension, and now this is ready for the next person. So I have a vehicle here that was brought in on the same day that I'm actually making the video of the lug nuts, and these complain of a wobbling sensation, right? Wobbling, shimmying, and where am I starting? I'm starting with the lug nuts. So he did this one just now, click, and we're sitting at 110 foot-pounds. The spec is 100 to 115. I did this one, but watch what happens with this one. Watch how loose it is. I got a quarter of a turn on that, okay? And he's missing a lug nut. Let's see how this one is. Oh, look at that. Loose. He's missing a lug nut, and look at this. So we got 3 torqued. This one might be stripped. Let's see if it tightens. If it doesn't ever tighten, then let's strip. It's getting tighter. Wow. That's dangerous. And this is not even my student. This is another person on campus. There he goes. I got, what'd you say, 3 full turns?
Yeah.
This is a student on campus that's complaining of a wobbling sensation, and yet he's unaware that the tire is ready to come off the car. If he kept driving, he brought it here for me to inspect it. And of course, I'm going to inspect it to make sure it's safe, and it was not safe. Perfect example of how lug nuts translates into a very dangerous situation.